Hello, everyone. This is Candice Wiggins. I graduated from La Jolla Country Day, class of 2004, and then I went on to Stanford University, where I was fortunate enough to be a four-time All-American there from 2004 to 2008. And then in 2008, I was drafted third overall to the Minnesota Lynx of the WNBA. And then in 2011, I became a world champion when we won the championship with Minnesota Lynx, and my first and only championship. And today what I really want to talk about is just my experiences, my experiences from being a young girl, and the connection that I had with the WNBA when it first was started when I was 10 years old, and just sort of the experience that I had when I actually realized my dream of making it into the WNBA, and a couple of the lessons that it taught me. I would really like to focus on primarily on my time in Minnesota specifically as a market, and also I finished my WNBA career in New York. So I would also like to speak on briefly on my experiences in New York and just what it taught me about the connections that female athletes really have. And it took me obviously a lifetime to get to this realization, but I'm hoping that it'll help, young female athletes as they are aspiring to figure out where it is that they get to, and just their connections that you make. Because to me, life is all about that, is making that connection and understanding, what your purpose was when you're fulfilling your goals. Now, before I get started, I wanted to just briefly save this. This is pretty much the overall theme of what I wanted to speak on, which is, as an athlete, your body is your speaking voice. And I'll get a little bit more into that, explain what I mean by that. And the field or the court that you perform on and compete on, that is the platform. Okay, so I really want you to think, as I'm speaking and relaying these messages and explaining my stories, is that just think about the athlete, the body. Your body is the physical embodiment. That's your voice, and the field or the court that you're competing on, that's the platform. So it's a different kind of communication that you're having with the world around you as an athlete versus as, let's say, just a woman who is speaking for her voice and speaking for her rights. So wanted to put that clear. That's kind of the thesis statement of what I'm be talking about. Now, first thing I want to talk about briefly is the connection that I had to the WNBA when I was like 10 years old. That was when the WNBA first started, and I just remember, it was really, it was huge. It was the biggest thing that ever happened to my life. It kind of minimized my life in a way, having an actual WNBA, because I actually remember time before there were a professional sports league in America. It was always, oh, you can go to college and that's it, or play overseas and that's it. There's nothing more for a woman to pursue. But once the WNBA started, it opened up everything, and it made, like I said, my life really small, because it made my goals more contained and more, it wasn't such an abstract idea. It was very specific. And I would say that it was a good thing because it kept me really focused and driven, but it also kind of narrowed the pathway of my life experiences, where I was very, very just, focused on what it is going to take for me to get to the point where I'm drafted. And so I wanted to you to really understand that connection that I had as a young girl is kind of the basis of my whole identity of who I am today as a former professional athlete. But then once I got drafted to the WNBA, once I actually got there, four-time All-American at Stanford, all of that, it was wonderful. And obviously my education was the focus of my life if I, made it an institution like Stanford. But, once I got past college and into the pros, it really became about, okay, I'm here. Now, what does this mean? What does this mean? I'm finally here. I'm finally arrived here. And what I learned was, especially being drafted to a place like Minnesota, where there wasn't a lot of success in the past, there wasn't a lot of attendance, there wasn't a lot of buzz. I kind of brought that, and there was something that I really realized, that I had power and control, that I could change the destiny of the ones after me by what I did, at this point. So long story short, trying to be very as brief as possible, I learned, like I said earlier, about how my body became my voice. And maybe if I felt like I was, not really heard, as an athlete, you can perform and you can change hearts and minds by communicating through your sport and how you compete and the way that you play and the way that you express your passion. And that was something that I really fundamentally understood as time went on. And then once we won the championship in 2011, it was like, it really made sense, and you started seeing a whole bunch of people in the stands, and you started seeing people actually care about who we were as individuals. Our team, it was primarily African American girls on the team. There was only one white girl, Lindsay Whalen, and she was from Minnesota, and so it was just one white girl and 11 black girls, and a place like Minnesota really embraced all of us. Obviously, it probably was the connection they had with Lindsay, but it was amazing how much change happened because of the communication as an athlete, how you're able to just dispel all of these myths about what women can and can't do, how you can make someone feel. And the biggest change that I saw, I remember, was thinking, we were in the airports, in Minnesota airport, and there'd always be Timberwolves gear and Vikings gear and Minnesota Gophers. There would never be Lynx gear. And I'll never forget the day that we went to the airport and there it was, Minnesota Lynx gear, and I just realized that's when I kind of hit me as, we made a change, and it wasn't anything that we said that spoke out. And it was really about, the work that we put in through our bodies and the platform of competition. So that really taught me, I think that's a very important lesson to understand, when you don't have control, but you do have control over things as an athlete. And it's not necessarily your voice, because, your voice is important, but I think at first it's about people connection, a connection that they make. And with athletes, it's so easy to make that connection through the physical sport, and it happens on all levels, but to see it on the professional women's level, it was astounding. And then the last thing I want to finish up with is in New York, biggest market in the entire world. Saw the same thing happen in New York. When I got there playing for the New York Liberty, we were just not really talked about team. And over the course of that season, we became the #1 team in the WNBA. And it wasn't about, these are New Yorkers, have their hard-earned money that they spent, and they're spending it to watch us compete because of what they see when they come to the game. It's not what we're saying, what we're talking about. Obviously there's a connection there, but it's really about what they see on the court, the competition, the passion, the spirit of play. And that's the advantage that you have as an athlete. You obviously have a voice, and that is important, but the voice that you really have is the voice that you employ when you play. And just to finish up in New York, we went from being, not talked about, really low. They hadn't been in the playoffs in 5 years, to being the #1 team in the WNBA. And Spike Lee came to our game, sitting courtside. We're in the playoffs, and it was just amazing. It was incredible to me, because I said, if this can happen in New York, biggest market in the world, and you can see this transformation, then I know that there's power there. But it just needs to be, explored a little bit more, and just a really understanding that it's not a bad thing that your body and your performance is your voice. So I hope that helps, and there's so many other stories that I really would love to explain, but I don't want to go on for too long. But I'm just grateful for your attention, and I hope that it helps with your conversation. And to all the young, aspiring female athletes, just keep on traversing, because you don't have no idea what your work is going to do for the next generation behind you. And just be really grateful for the opportunity that you have to compete on the court, because that's where your loudest voice is going to be, whether in your own families, in your neighborhoods, or if you're fortunate enough to make it to the top, it's the professional world. So thank you.